All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We have a special guest today, Aline Urkumyan. I've practiced saying her name because it was difficult for me, but welcome to the show, Aline. We are so glad to have you on the show and kind of dive into your life and all that good stuff. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Honored.
So kind of like we were talking about earlier, we definitely want to get into your battle with addiction. There's definitely some cool points in there that we've talked about that I'm super interested in. I think the audience will love to hear about those things that we'll get into later. Anne, did you have anything else on that?
No, I mean, I think we just have to jump into, well, why are you here speaking about addiction? That's the story is the story. And then we can talk about the cool things that you're doing to maintain your sobriety and all that stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm here because why else did I survive everything else I did if I'm not here to share it and make an impact, at least if I can, on one person. How I've stayed sober. I think it's a personal formula for everyone, but for me, it's, putting myself first. And, I think in society, it's mostly seen as selfish, but I think we need to be a little bit selfish. And that's something that's not really valued enough. I do a lot of, we hear the word self-care, self-love, but really what, to me, that is, cutting out all the BS in life and just, diving deep into who I am and what I love and really understanding that. So, it's fine. For me, it's finding the balance in everything. And so when I think of addiction, I think of, do we all have addictive personalities? I think on a spectrum, we all do. It is the spectrum at the end of the day, like where we all fall. And I hear a lot about how take that addiction and channel it into something else that's healthy. So fitness, but I think channeling it into something else and then diving into what your personal addiction is and where it's coming from and what it's rooted in is more important, so that to help create the balance, because you don't want to be overly addicted to something else, because at the end of the day, it's still a characteristic that isn't healthy.
So let's take that and rewind it a bit. Like when and how did your addiction, we'll just call it to substance abuse, because it wasn't a healthy kind of addiction. When did that begin for you, or when did you realize you had a problem?
Yeah. Well, when I realized I had a problem were two different phases, but
okay.
For sure. I started using when I was 14, and I was, my parents, I was a brat. Like, I didn't know the value of money. I didn't understand what it was. I just wanted stuff. And as a kid, I was like, oh, it's just given to me. So I'm going to just keep asking. And my parents gave, and then I developed this love for shoes, high-end shoes. And my mom was like, no, she cannot wear designer shoes at her age. Like, that's just ridiculous. And, my dad came from a third world country, and he just wanted to give us, the intention was good, wanted to give us something he didn't have, but how do you manage that? And my mom was just like, no, this doesn't make sense. So they weren't on the same page there. But so they were like, you want expensive shoes, you can get your expensive shoes, but you need to get a job. So I got a job. And when you're 14, or I had just turned 15, I had been exposed. I was exposed to people who are older and more experienced and more mature and into drugs. And, you only learn so much in school and through your parents about it. And you don't know how to manage, a good sales pitch. So
that's true.
And so I had started quite early. I was working at Round Table, and, my mom's salon was right next door to Round Table. She's like, she can work and I'll still have my eye on her. How much can you actually do? So one day my supervisor wanted to leave early and go into a rave to go do his thing. I didn't know what a rave was. And then he was like, he explained what it was. then he said, in exchange for working my shift, I'll give you a couple sheets of acid. And I was like, well, what's that? Like, I had never heard of acid before. Here, back then, I think the focus was really on like, don't smoke weed, don't do this. And that's really what the no's were around in the 90s, early 2000s. And so I took it. And then when I got home, I took like 2 or 3 taps, not knowing like what it would do.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was pretty intense. And, that was pretty much my gateway into like exploring more. Wasn't really addicted to it, but it was like, this is fun. And I didn't die. But so now
Wow.
what?
Wow,
And
what an experience to first have.
yeah,
By yourself
Multiple
on
hits of
LSD.
acid with no idea of what you're getting yourself into. That's not like having a couple beers,
no. And it was really and you can feel it all. It was, your mind opens up, your heart opens, everything opens up in this different way that you've never experienced. And so I liked it, but I wasn't addicted to that. And then from there, I ended up moving to Whole Foods and then was exposed to like all kinds of stuff. And I was supposed to get like an ecstasy drop, I think, one day. And then someone that I was working with was like, why don't you try meth? And I was like, okay, I don't know what it is, but okay. Tried it. And then I was immediately addicted to the rush, the feelings, like all this stuff that I felt, which, to put into words was this feeling of empowerment. And, as a kid, I don't know how to understand what that meant. I just knew I loved it and I craved it more. So everything after that became chasing that first high, which, never happened again. But then I really used it because it was this superpower drug. I became a superwoman, really. I was juggling my life. And that was what, back then, I don't even know what it is like today, but you have 7 classes to juggle, all these different reports. You have your family, I had my work, which I needed to maintain straight A's if I wanted to continue to work. I had church, so I was going to Sunday school. I had an Armenian community. I had sports. I was swimming competitively. And somewhere, I don't know where I got it from, I thought I had to be perfect in all of it. And there just wasn't enough hours in the day. And, being on meth and getting high all the time gave me that power to stay awake and not sleep, which is ridiculous because that's not what we're meant to do. Right. If I think about, did someone actually tell me I had to do all this? No, I don't even know where it came from, but I guess, a society created it and just became. And I didn't know how else to manage all those things and be the perfect, what I thought was important to be perfect. Later on, of course, I've learned that progress is more valuable. But, and that's pretty much how I got hooked. And then it became a weight thing. I was never really, complimented on my exterior look. I just was always complimented on all the important stuff, which are very valuable: my aptitude, my intelligence, my skills, my personality, my character. But, I never got the aesthetic compliments like everyone else did. And so when I started losing weight, I did start getting compliments and it felt nice for once. And so it was like, oh, I like this. My body type is not meant to be under 100 pounds. I don't think anyone's is. But
yeah, right. I don't think anyone's is. That's right.
Anyone's is as a teenager for sure. But I got there, and then, I used for. It wasn't until I was 17 until my parents figured out something's going on, but it wasn't even them. I think parents are really blinded by like, there's no way my kid would do something, or they didn't really grow up with this kind of stuff in the countries they came from, so they weren't exposed.
Yeah, especially if they didn't have that in their own past. Like when you're a parent and you've been an addict, you're always looking for it. But when you have a parent who never went through that, they have no idea.
No idea at all. And so I think one day my aunt came over and my hands started like shaking when I was having a conversation. And she pointed it out and I was like, oh shit, I just got outed. Like, now what's gonna happen? next day, my mom was like, I'm taking you for a drug test. And, we got into an argument, of course. I was like, I'm not going for a drug test. She's like, well, you lost a lot of weight. Thinking like, in my mind, I'm like, I've been this size for a little bit now. Like, why are you just now catching on? Well, okay. And I was like, yeah, it's just diet pills. Every lie in the book to get out of it. And she took me to go get my test. And that's when they found out that I was using all kinds of stuff. So it was, a shitty experience as a kid, because the focus is on the problem being my kid's a drug addict. How do we fix it, rather than the reason why or what's going on behind it? So I went to therapy, did some of the NA classes, and I wasn't present in it. I didn't care. I just wanted to continue using, and I was like, whatever, I'll do what they want me to do because I have to, but I'm still gonna do me. But and then 17, so that was high school. That's when they sent me to the wilderness program after like therapy and everything. Nothing worked. And
where did you go? Where was the wilderness program at? Utah?
Yeah, Utah. It was Utah.
Yeah. The hub of wilderness programs out there.
Aspen Achievement Academy. And part of the process is they kidnap you in your sleep. And then they
that was my follow-up question.
Yeah, so but my father argued and said that he would only send me and agree to all the terms if he could do it himself. He didn't agree. Didn't agree. His thing was, I'm sending her to get help, not create more trauma. And so they agreed, but everyone else in that program was kidnapped by a complete stranger, which is insane to me.
Yeah, in the middle of the night in their own home.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they do that.
That's traumatizing.
Yeah. What's crazy too is, so I've been a counselor for the last 7 years, one-on-one, and I can think of 15 people right now off the top of my head that when we trace back the most like traumatizing point of their life, it's that moment.
Wow.
So it's funny that you say
vividly.
That because I've done every type of therapy, the inner child work, the hypnosis stuff, I've done it all. And there was a part of me that was still somehow connected to that time, and I couldn't figure it out until 3 weeks ago, I went back I was like, I'm going back to the place and I need to figure out what it is. And I said, I think I just need to kind of like feel it through. So I went, and for me, it was the drive. So from like Salt Lake City Airport to the town of Loa, and it was all the feelings of like, it's insane how real the feelings are in the moment. But, and then, of course, crying, it's the fear of abandonment. Where am I going? Like, I'm not worthy enough to be a part of my family and being sent out here to the middle of the desert. Like they don't tell you where you're going or what you're doing. They're just, in my mind, all I knew about Utah was Mormons, and I didn't know Mormons enough to know that there were obviously not all polygamists, but like, I was like, am I being sold off to a man right now? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
am I going to be somebody's 14th wife?
Yeah. Am I being someone? That's exactly what I thought. And so, it was scary. And as a kid also, you don't know what all these non-disclosure agreements and all these liability paperwork is, because your parents do it for you. So when I sat there and I had to read all this paperwork and sign off on them, there's a clause that says you could potentially die. And I was like, do my parents know that I'm signing this? And they were like, they signed one too. And what do you care? You were killing yourself anyways. And I was like,
that was their attitude around it.
Yeah. And I was like,
that was the admissions process.
That was the admissions process.
Jeez,
and I was
Louise.
like, that wasn't actually my intent. Maybe is the fact, like, yes, drugs can eventually kill you over time, but the intent wasn't to kill myself. The intent was to create, a superwoman version of myself. But, But and so that was part of it that had stuck with me too. Like, my parents sent me here to die. When I had the conversation as an adult with my parents, they're like, we sent you there because we knew you would fix yourself. Like, we knew you'd survive it. Near-death experiences? Hell yes. It was insane.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you were doing, how long you were there?
Sure. I was there for I want to say it was roughly almost 3 months. I actually have
Okay.
all my notebooks because
Wow.
they make you have to journal everything. And part of the program is because I was skipping class so much. So part of the program is getting you back up to speed with your grades so that you can make graduation.
Right. Like
And
schooling.
and there are just so many components to it. So it's broken up into phases, animal phases. So there's mouse, coyote, buffalo, and eagle. And you kind of graduate to each one throughout the program. So the first 3 days, you're what they call a mouse. And so they, after you've been kidnapped in your sleep and sent into Utah and go through this stressful admissions process, they take you again on another drive. You have no idea where you're going. It's like pitch dark, no lights. I'm like, where are we going? At this point, I'm like, I have no clue. Like, there was no thought because I was like, I don't even know what's out here. And so they drop you off at this campsite and they tell you that you can't talk to anyone. They hand you a bag of granola, and the bag of granola is supposed to last you 3 days. So
Wow.
it was intense. And the part of the mouse phase is to observe the group and see how they function without you. And you can't talk to anyone. And on the third day, on the morning of the fourth day, they kidnap you in your sleep. They blindfold you. They pick you up, and it's what they call a trust exercise. And they take you down an extremely steep mountain, blindfolded, and each person in that group's, I want to say there was maybe 7 of us in the group, holds on to you, and you have to listen to their voice as they guide you down the mountain. And you literally have to put your entire life into their hands. I guess how you build rapport extremely quickly.
Yeah.
You're about to be with these people that you've never met before for the next few months. But
And were they all women? Was it co-ed? Was it men and women?
so my group was the first co-ed group, and it was the first experimental co-ed group that we're trying
Got
out.
it.
Otherwise, all the other ones were broken into just males or females. And
Gotcha.
And what was the age group on that?
it was anywhere between 12 and 17.
Wow.
Wow.
But the average in my group was about like 15, 16. They give you all the survival stuff that you need. Sleeping, you have no concept of time, which I loved. Actually, it taught me how to listen to my body.
Yeah.
When am I hungry? When something hurts? Like, not eat because you're told to eat at this time, but eat because your body says to eat.
Yeah. Wow.
And then just reconnecting. So after mouse phase, you're a coyote, and coyote is where you're really in it, learning it, being it. You have responsibilities. If you don't meet the responsibilities, then there's consequences to them. There were times where I went on strike. I was like, I'm not hiking today. It's not happening, because you literally had to hike to water. Because they give you iodine tablets. So the only way you had water was to hike to water. And we had reached a place where it was this mini waterfall. So all of the earth was this beautiful mud that I could only picture on my body. So I was like, I want a spa day. We're not moving from here. And they're like, you're being extremely selfish. I said, actually, I think I'm adding value into everyone's life today by, throwing out a spa day. So I learned really quick that I could take control of the situation, because they can actually abandon you. But, I didn't abuse that power. There was also, we had to take turns making fire. And if it was your night to make fire, or if you couldn't make fire with your, like, we had a bow, and have to make it by hand, bow, a rock, and a piece of wood. And if you don't make fire, then you don't get to eat hot food. You have to eat like your cold stuff, which wasn't that great. So it was about meeting your calorie intake more than anything. So an example would be like tortillas with taco seasoning would be a meal, or
Oh, wow.
sloppy joes. It was not fun. But
I imagine, like, when it was your turn to make fire, you didn't want to let the group down. So you really wasn't just about you, where if it was just yourself, you'd be like, it's okay, I'll just do whatever. But you've got the group depending on you, so close as you. to
So
like step
for me,
up?
yes, but there were other kids that were like, I don't give a shit about anybody else here. So it really depended. It depended on the personality, what stage they were in, emotionally, in the group. You know, one kid was sent there. I'll never forget. He was the youngest. I think he was 11, and even the counselors were like, "What is? I don't." They didn't know how to help the kid because he was literally there because his parents didn't like that he was a break dancer, that he liked hip hop music. That's why he.
Wow.
So
His
they're like,
parents should have been there.
yeah. So, you know, there were situations like that. Or then there was, you know, a girl in our group who's suicidal, and they give us all knives, like, because when if there's an encounter with an animal, you're going to need to learn how to save yourself. So
Right.
like, how do they process that? A girl who's suicidal, you give her a knife? Like, that's insane to me. But I mean, I guess they knew what they were doing. But yeah, so coyote phase was interesting. And then there's the team building part was, I think 6 weeks into the program, they bring in what's like a cart. Picture like the Oregon Trail, that cart where like oxen pull it.
Yeah.
So that cart, but without the top. So all our stuff would be on it, and 2 people would be in the front and everybody else would be in the back. And in the back, it's like you're the brakes. And I'll never forget, there was this one exercise we had to do, and it was literally to go down like a slate of granite at like 90 degrees. And I was like, this is where we die. This is where we're all gonna die. And the counselors are not allowed to help ever. And we have to work out through the group who's going to be in the front. So the 2 people in the front, you let go in the back, the 2 people in the front are instantly dead. There's like no way they would survive. And so that's a lot of burden and guilt to carry, like in the back. And the people in the front, of course, are like, okay, we're going to literally take on everything and risk our lives now. But we did it. And then, you know, it's interesting because you go through this fear doing it, and then at the end of it, you're like, holy shit, this achievement is insane. I can't believe we just did this together. It's like the whole roller coaster of emotions through everything.
Yeah. Wow.
Really understanding the power of your mind. Like, I don't think what we did is humanly possible, and it's nothing I've ever done. And then to actually do it is insane.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the perks of it, right? Is like the resilience, like trusting yourself, like the rewiring, being with nature, being present, having to care for someone more than yourself, like a little bit of humility. It's like a humbling experience. And I think like
Also empowering.
and empowering too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of perks to it. I think just the delivery of it is
Extreme.
the delivery of it is extreme. They deliver it in a very negative way. Where if it was delivered in like a voluntarily like positive type of way, I think it would land more rather than like force, you know. But
I mean, I've thought of that too, but who's willingly like, yes, let me go into the desert for 2 months, no showers, no bathrooms, nothing.
Especially as a teenager. Like
as a teenager, you're like, no. But did I enjoy my experience while I was there? Absolutely. I loved it. Did it ground me? Yes. I didn't leave there with quitting drugs though, but I left there with all the core values that later on in life, as I got older,
helped you out.
And yeah, they're all in the subconscious, sitting there for a time, like when I was ready.
Gotcha.
And
what happened after Coyote?
Coyote.
Is that when you became the eagle?
No, then you're a buffalo.
Oh,
So
buffalo.
And this is interesting because, yeah, you know, I always thought to myself, I've always been a natural leader. And I was like, somewhere though, I had to learn how to be a leader. And later on, when I was looking back as an adult, like what the different phases were, buffalo phase is where they actually train you how to be a leader and what a good leader is. Not like, you're listening to me because I told you to do it. It's really about meeting the person at where they're at, and that really encompassing what empathy is, and working with someone rather than telling them what to do. And you know, and I have that part of the program definitely to thank for the type of leader I am today. And then after buffalo is eagle. I never made it to eagle, actually. And it's because eagle also required, well, I started eagle, I didn't finish Eagle. So they require you to, again, separate yourself from the group. And now you have to see how they function without you, because you just went from being their leader and now they have to adjust with your departure and all the teachings that you put in and the value you added to the group. So when the counselors took like the wrong turn and we ended up somewhere we weren't supposed to. We were miles away from water. It was over 100 degrees. And, you know, when you don't know you're going to get lost, like we manage our water accordingly because you know how many miles you're going to walk and how long it'll take to get there. So you know how much to drink, but in taking a wrong turn, now you're kind of screwed. So one girl had finished all her water and so everyone's hiking in front of me and I'm about like 20 feet away, but I'm watching one of the girls and she's hallucinating at this point. And because we hadn't had water for hours and it was so hot, and she was literally going to walk off the cliff. So I ran and grabbed her by her backpack and pulled her back. And so they called the paramedics and, you know, examined her, rehydrated her and everything. And then they pulled me aside and told me that my options were that I'm not going to graduate or I have to do the entire program over if I wanted to.
For breaking the rule.
Yeah. And I said, so I asked, what was I supposed to do? And they said, your job was to put yourself first, which was to observe the group function without you. So you were supposed to let her walk off the cliff. And I was like, no, that's not happening. And I said, and with that information, I will be departuring and I don't care about graduating from this.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I could be that tough. I don't think I could be that person trying to install those rules.
That was insane. And you know, the person that delivered that message to me was the one person I never thought would. And she actually broke down and was like, you not doing the program over and putting yourself first, you're going to relapse and you're going to do drugs all over again. Like I was like, wow, way to not have any faith in my future. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, how strange.
It was
so
interesting.
Were the counselors sober too? Like were they
were all
certified counselors, or were they just like sober people that like the mountains or in the desert?
They were sober people that like the mountains. They were not they were not like therapists. Yeah.
Gotcha.
People who knew how to hike. There were people who've been through what we'd been through and they're trained to do and say specific things. They definitely had more empathy and you have more connection with them than you do the therapists, oddly.
Because they've been through it.
They've been through it for sure. And so, yeah, when they sent the therapist out and I'm like, you're just giving me textbook BS. Like, I know, I'm living it. Like, I know what you're telling me. I couldn't connect. And,
Right.
but with the counselors, there was more empathy, but it wasn't a rehab. It was really a place to just remind you of the basics of who you are and what life is, you know, readjust your moral compass and your values, which, you know, I think after that program, the program is great, but the aftercare, right? So I didn't go to what they recommend, which is the ranch afterwards. And that's where you put a lot of the practices you learned in the wilderness into real life. I literally went from wilderness back to real life. And within 2 weeks, I was using again. Gotcha. And I remember thinking about it for a little bit too, like, do I really want to? Why am I? And I had no answers and I just used.
Especially after the counselor or the leader of that group told you were going to go use. It's like, do I want to make this person right now? Like,
yeah. And so I used, and then, you know, by that time, it was interesting, like the formula had changed. A lot of it was being laced with heroin. And my body had at that point gotten super addicted to it. Like I was fully out of control, 1000% out of control. I wasn't even using for what I had started. It was just a need and I couldn't see myself getting out of it. I didn't know what to do. And then fast forward to like when I was 21 is when I quit. And I remember the night before, I should have totally died. I was driving higher than a kite and I ended up in, you familiar with the Evergreen area where Evergreen College is?
No.
It's very woodsy, and so I ended up there, and my brain, it was so gone. I don't even know how I got there driving, and to like where my brain went, I was like, how did I end up in the Amazon forest? Like, I mean, it was just I was like, how did I get from my place to the Amazon so quick in a car? And it just like, I don't even know. I had lost full control of my mind, and I didn't like it. And the next day I woke up and I flushed everything I had down the toilet. I mean, it was a lot, and never looked back. I just had a conversation with myself and said, this is not who you are. It's like everything all at once, everything that I had learned about who I was and what my goals were in life from my experience at Utah had just like been downloaded. And I just never looked back. My focus became my education, continuous want for more knowledge and curiosity, and my career. All things that I knew that I could manage and control myself and not put into other people's hands. And that's really what did it for me.
Wow.
17 years later, still clean.
17 years, that's huge.
Yeah. And a lot of it is through, a lot of the stuff that I learned in Utah, right? Getting back into nature. I'm stressed out. Okay, I could totally use and I'll go away, or do I go into nature and take a hike and really reflect about what it is that's bothering me, and it'll pass, right? I've learned like all the feelings are temporary. I learned really what shame was in Utah too. Like they send you you could write letters back and forth to your parents, but it wasn't until I think you got to the Buffalo phase where you could receive letters from other people that weren't your parents. And part of moving into, I think from Coyote to Buffalo was you had to read the letter from your mom and dad, both separate letters, in front of the entire group for the first time without having ever to read it before, why you were there. So like all your shit on the table, and it's like there's nothing, no one's there to judge because we're all there for the same things. But it's just like to read the words for the first time from your parents' perspective is one of the most, what felt like at the time, shameful thing. I was so ashamed. Like to actualize them in words was intense for someone who's a kid. Like you don't know how to navigate shame. You don't know how to navigate through guilt. Like none of that is taught. And I think going through something like that really set me up for the future, which was, our past is our past, and that's it. Everything in life has been a situation of circumstance, and it doesn't define who I am as a person.
I would imagine that experience of having to be vulnerable, but also going through those emotions sober, like that's probably a big part of it, and just being with those emotions and learning how to, like you said, navigate that without like instantly just wanting to numb it or get rid of it or avoid it. It's like you're there, you have to deal with it.
Yeah, 1000%. It was very intense. And, I think if I have to constantly remind myself in life, like not everyone's been through the experiences I have been. So like going through COVID and people like watching people go through some of the toughest times of their lives, I'm just like, I have to remember they haven't gone through what I've gone through. And, and I could sit there and teach or help in any way, like what helped me, but it never works because they have to feel it and go through it themselves. And that was part of something I had to learn, like sit back and just allow them to go through the shit. And hopefully they'll come out on the other end. Because to sit and watch people self-destruct is probably one of the most difficult things for me to watch.
Yeah.
When
super
there's
hard.
another way, it's super hard. And then especially, and I know because I was on the other end. Everyone tried to help me. I didn't care until you get there on your own. But
And it kind of always goes back to that, right? Like we never change until we decide that we want to. And for the most part, nobody encouraging us to change really lands until we're willing to hear that we need to. It's like, it's the most difficult part of the process, but you never know, sometimes you get people closer to accepting they need to change, and you never know what little part you play in that.
Mhm.
And it isn't always instant, but
Yeah.
then when you see the lights flick on, it's always worth it.
Yes, agreed, for sure. But I look at a lot of where I'm at in my life today, and I think I owe a lot of gratitude to the wilderness program, for the teachings and the way that how it taught me to find balance within, being there for yourself, and you can be there for other people. It's not, if you have it in you to do both, you can. But taking time to do yoga, or taking time to meditate, taking time to, and by an example of what I can mean by that is our jobs, right? 9 to 5, you have to go to work. And how do you go to the doctor? How do you go to therapy when their hours are also 9 to 5? It's, a lot of people, I have friends who say they haven't been to the doctor, like gone to just to get a checkup, a routine checkup, blood work, whatever, see where they're at in their health in like 10 years. I'm like, why? You're not putting yourself first at all.
Some people, it's easier to not know.
Yeah.
It's easier to not know anything's wrong, or it's just easier. Sometimes it's a lot easier to do nothing.
Sure.
Or the generation that I grew up in is if it's not broke,
Don't fix it.
don't fix it. Like, your body will tell you something's wrong, you need to go.
Sure, for sure.
Which is kind of how I
Yeah.
operate. It's like, I'm fine. Why do I got to go need a doctor to validate that? I'm good.
But and things like the 2-3 times a year of doing 3-day solos. People will look at me and be like, how do you, a total extrovert, even do something like that? Because it's something that regrounds me and brings me back, and it's what is going to help me reset.
What is a solo? You would just go out in the wilderness by yourself for 3 days, or
yeah. That's exactly it.
Okay.
And it's one of the most beautiful things ever. And sometimes I might not be able to commit to the 3 days because life, but I will, a lot of the hiking or adventuring I do into wilderness, I try to do alone. So at least I'll get 9 or 10 hours in, with nothing but my thoughts. And it's a different form of meditation. It's the concept of forest bathing. So it's, reconnecting to earth, reconnecting to yourself, and just, being comfortable with all the crap that's going to come out into it. And that's it. It's self-care. I don't know why self-care is known as, the spa day, or, spending more money on a vacation. It's really not. I think it's, self-care is also waking up and taking a shower and brushing your teeth and doing the things that are important.
Yeah, well, I like what you said with that, because it's like what you're talking about is way more like simplistic in nature, and it's way more rooted in like who we are as people, and I like that idea, because I feel like the modern life is too busy, that the things that we get caught up in are so like beyond like being a human, like the first world problems, or got to get my iPhone updated. Like none of it is like actually required to like being a human being. So always like checking back into like what really makes us human, and simplifying it to, people with addiction. We're constantly overthinking and moving and shaking, and it's just fast, fast, fast. So I love the idea of just rerouting, and it's the most simple way of doing it. And it's, in recovery, I always kind of hear like the simple things are what works. Like the more I can keep things simple, the better I'll feel, the better my life will be.
Sure.
So I like that you kind of pointed that out.
It's so important. And, it just helps you reset and stay grounded in what your morals and values are. And I think that's really, sorry, hummingbird just like stopped at the window and stared. I was like, wow.
Yeah, you gotta give that presence when that happens.
That always, that I was actually gonna go into that. You know, I had a situation at work and there was a hummingbird, oddly, that flew into the window and it collapsed. And
Aww.
I was like, oh my God. And it was still alive. And I had a meeting that I had with my boss and the other like leadership team in like 10 minutes. I literally got on my email and I sent my boss an email, sent a picture of the bird. I said, I'm going to the is it the Humane Society where you go drop off the animals for care?
Mhm.
I was like, I'm going there. I'm sorry, I'll catch the notes later. And like, just knowing what your priorities are, like the meeting notes will be there later. The bird's life could be saved.
I love that.
Oh yeah, I would do that 1,000 times over.
And it's
We're
like,
big animal lovers.
Yeah, I'd
over
probably
there.
try to do CPR on it myself first.
and it's those things. And my boss was supportive of it, you know. And then if, let's say I had a boss that wasn't supportive of it, do I want to work for a company that thinks the meeting's more important than another life? Like, you know.
But you know what else is cool too is like the autonomy to make that decision and to trust yourself that that's more important. Like other people's opinion of what you think you need to do doesn't matter.
True.
And that's like a huge thing that probably stemmed in the wilderness program, but also in recovery. You know, like I think people leading up to addiction, like we made the wrong choices for a long time. So we didn't have much confidence in our decision making because usually, right, like what I learned in AA at the beginning, my first thought is wrong. Right. So I spent like a year of my life thinking that the first thing I ever thought was wrong, or that just that my thinking is wrong and that I'm wrong and I'm broken. And it's very nice and rewarding to know that like now we have this faith and this confidence and this autonomy to make decisions just like that, right? Simple but beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That like what I think makes sense, and I honestly don't care too much what others think because I have this big confidence in who I am.
Yeah. And appreciating everyone for what it is they offer, I think, is something that's not really part of societal norms either. Like,
Especially these days.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to have differences.
No, we need to all be the same.
Right.
Yeah. Why
Right.
aren't we the same?
Yeah. Yeah. And anybody that's not the same, we don't like you. We don't like your opinion and we don't want anything to do with you.
For sure. That's like a whole nother story. But
Oh yeah.
That's a whole nother podcast.
entire podcast. Like a series, but
A series. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
true.
Which we've purposely avoided our entire tenure as podcasters.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
yeah.
So-
You know, and part of recovery was knowing exactly what it is that I like, that works for me, and aligning myself with it. And it's as small as what kind of place do I enjoy working? You know, I'm comfortable in a mid-sized setting. I'm comfortable with people who are, you know, supportive, competitive, you know, and it's really understanding that so that you can match yourself with company culture, missions, and
Our values.
and values, because that's what's going to make you happy to go to work every day.
Yeah.
How many people I've talked to is like, oh, I love doing this, but people sucked out the passion. Was it people that sucked out the passion, or was it just like, you know, your visions weren't aligned? You know, don't give up on what you love because it didn't work out there. But
like, don't let somebody else steal it for you. If you loved it, find it again. Don't chalk it up as a loss because some people suck, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, just really knowing, being confident in knowing what it is you want and who you are, I think is a huge part of it. I think one of the books I wish I got in high school, not later on in life, was What Color is Your Parachute? And not sure if you guys have read it, but it's such a great book on how to, it's career development, but just it's a hands-on thing. And they have this thing, the flower exercise, and the flower exercise encompasses everything from like location, where you want to be. You know, people you work well with, personalities, not people, personalities you work well with, personalities you don't work well with. And it's all these things that help you figure out exactly where you should be, not where society or your parents or someone else says.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Awesome.
So, you know, I think a cool avenue to go down would be, you know, you have 17 years of long-term recovery. What does recovery look like for you today? What's important to you today? What is like your recovery routine, you know, 17 years later? You know, I would imagine some people can't fathom having to be in recovery that long, or having to put in the work, quote unquote, for that long. So what does it look like for you today in today's terms?
Yeah, that's a great question. Recovery today is ownership. So taking responsibility, whether it be good or bad.
Yeah, that's how responsibility works, unfortunately. Yeah.
You know, I messed up and it's okay, and I'll do better next time. Usually when I make a mistake, I'm never making it again. I learned from my mistake, and that's, you know, it's finding the lessons in theirs. And that's part of it. And it was, for the longest time, it was being okay with that. And so I'm okay with it. And that's a huge part of the recovery for me. And then, you know, how do I get there? I get there through Qigong. You know, really taking time out to, one, put myself into nature and doing the breath work there, and taking in, you know, being aware of all my senses and thoughts. I don't, you know, I've talked to a lot of people who say meditation is, you know, they can't meditate because the thoughts are there. But that's kind of the point of meditation. Right? The thoughts are supposed to come, and you're not supposed to focus on them. You're supposed to just let them pass, and it's the process of letting go. And, you know, I think letting go is part of my recovery too. It's, you know, it's such a strange thing to have to put into words. Sorry. It's just
Can
like,
you explain, because I have a lot of interest in this. What exactly is Qigong? Because we do meditation, mindfulness,
sure,
teacher, all that stuff. It sounds like it sort of melds all those things together, or what exactly is it?
Sure. It's a form of meditation that really focuses on, I mean, it's ultimately a tool for healing and prevention of illness. So it also acts as a massage for your organs. Picture Tai Chi. It's that, but at a much slower pace. And, you know, part of building patience with myself was doing something that was that slow, and creating harmony within myself. So
it's like body movement as well.
Body movement, extreme, yeah, very, 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 like very slow paced. So like meditation in your mind, you're like, okay, I'm still, right? I can do this. I'm mentally prepared for this. Yoga, you have some movement, and Tai Chi, I'd say it's movement and you have like a good flow. And then Qigong just takes it down a notch where you're just like, you know, you fight yourself, like trying to get through it when you first start it.
So what does getting through it, what do you mean by that? Like, is it like a guided meditation? Is there an instructor? Is there a class? Is it like a personal like endeavor?
When you first start, guided is always the best way to go, because someone's walking you through it to get you through, get you to a place of being calm. I think once you reach higher levels of it, you do it in silence. And you know, the best, you can do it in your room. You don't always have to be in nature. You can do it in your bedroom. You can do it outside, wherever you're comfortable, wherever you feel, you know, when you want to add it into your life. It's a lot of it focuses on the breathing. And like, I was supposed to do this last week, but then I broke out into hives. And so I was like, how am I going to get rid of these hives? I had them for 10 days. Like, I don't even know what caused it. Wow. And so, you know, I learned that through Qigong, I learned that skin problems are directly related to your lungs. And so I had to do some more lung and respiratory exercises. And so there's very fixed movements for different organs in the body. Oh, wow. I do a lot focused on the liver because I don't have a gallbladder.
Gotcha.
So it's specific movements and breath works, and it acts as like a massage sort of, so it's a massage for the liver, and it helps the blood flow and the oxygen get to where it needs to get.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Like self-healing.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to do some YouTubing tonight.
Yeah.
I'd like to go do a class just to try it out, see how it feels. I mean, that's what happened with you. You stumbled on it, right?
Yeah. It's you know, a lot of the underlining practices I learned during my time in the wilderness. The breath work, the different movements, sort of being with your thoughts and being okay with the thoughts. And then a couple of years ago, you know, and I've always added those throughout my life. So when I went to London a couple of years ago, I took a yoga class, and I was supposed to take a yoga class. Yoga got canceled and replaced with Qigong, which I had no idea what it was when it was labeled. I was like, what is Qigong? But okay, sure, I'm here. I'm going to take it. This is what the universe wants. I'm
already in London.
I'm here. Let's do it. This might be part of the process. Let's just go. So, you know, I went into it, and I remember leaving that class just extremely aware of my body and feeling really good about myself on all fronts, emotional, physical, just like I could really feel the benefits in a 45-minute session. Wow. And the only exercise really we did in that class was waking up your kidneys. So that's like one exercise I'll do every morning when I wake up. And it's just, you know, getting the blood to get to the organs that you need it. And, you know, I do a tapping exercise, which is extremely important, and like a rubbing exercise. And I don't think we do that enough. I read an article recently that, you know, for the longest time, the Chinese were actually keeping Qigong a secret. Like it was just their thing, and it wasn't exposed to the world. And I think it's barely making it out here. So when I was in London, I took that class. The first thing I did when I got back here was I need to find a Qigong class somewhere. And there weren't any. And then I found the Taoist Center in Marin, and the Shifu there does teach it, and he who I'm getting certified through. And it's a process, and the process is ego development, and it's really removing ego from the self, which is you know, something I've worked on towards, but never labeled. I love labeling things. So like, you know, I didn't really understand what guilt and shame were until it was labeled through like the Dare to Lead class. Or I didn't understand really what development was until I took Qigong and was like, oh, when like, you know, putting the name to the feeling.
For sure. And,
you know, and there were parts of the exercises and the homework that I did through the Qigong certification where the Shifu would be like, this is still ego, go back and try again. I'm like, what is he talking? Like, it was very challenging. How do you you know, and that's how you really get to that oneness, is separating yourself from the ego. And that was, you know, I like to think I don't really have that much ego, and the line of work that I do, it really can't have ego. Like you just can't take things personally. And so I thought I had done that, but was nowhere near what I was trying to do. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, I'm doing a practice that monks do from like day one on the planet. Like, why do I think I'm going to achieve this in just like this short amount of time?
Ego.
Ego, exactly. I can do it. Exactly.
I know. I thought that was funny that they called it ego development, but it's really like ego, like regression.
Undeveloped.
Yeah, we're like undeveloping our ego.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny. It sounds like ego development, like, oh no, like we don't need more of that.
No, we don't need more
things develop.
Less ego, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's something I see in work settings too a lot. Like, you know, starting a new job, people expect you to come in and like just take over. And I said, you know, there's a difference in knowing, you know, showing up confident and being with authority, and then at the same time, you know, not showing up with I know everything, and allow people to teach you what they already know. And that's why they're there, because they're the experts. And, you know, depending on the work environment, like conscious leadership, I think is a new one that's finally,
I like that.
Finally coming into light, which is great. But yes, ego, I guess underdeveloping the ego was a huge.
That's right. Undoing it.
And that's
my favorite line is, your ego is not your amigo.
I love that.
Yeah, I say that one all the time. I think it's funny because it's like childish, but it's also true.
I heard
You
that
know?
on the Peloton commercial this week. I was
Really?
like, huh.
They
Yeah.
stole it from me, Ange.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. And so, you know, in recovery was what really, I mean, honestly, is building a routine that works.
Yeah.
Things that can't go my day without. So yoga, workout, Qigong, eating healthy, eating the right foods that are in season. And, you know, a lot of this is, it sucks because we have to teach ourselves all this stuff. There's no one out there that's really teaching you, you know, you should only eat foods that are in season. I didn't know that until like maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah. People don't know that foods have seasons because we have
Yep.
so much of them.
Year round,
Yeah.
especially here in California.
Like,
Yeah.
dude, we don't grow watermelon all year. Okay.
No.
Watermelon isn't always around. They're
Yeah.
so sweet because it's a treat. It's a seasonal treat.
Uh-huh. But then you go into the grocery store, you're like, it's on sale for $1. I have to get it. But it's like, that doesn't make sense. It's not grown now. It doesn't matter that it's on sale. It's actually probably not good for you.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely GMO'd at this point.
Or, you know, when I drive down the road through Gilroy, I'm like, 10 avocados for $1. Why? Like, how?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a deal. That's a steal.
I always see that one too. And I'm like, 10 avocado. Well, here's the deal. If you stop there, they're this big. They're tiny. They're the size of a cherry. They're
That's
90% pit,
Yeah,
those avocados.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And so building that small routine, you know, whether it's like waking up and the first thing I do is drinking a cold glass of water and then brushing my teeth, like just that alone, part of the, I think, is helpful through recovery. And because it gives you, you know, a sense of purpose in the morning, set your day up correctly. You know, it just sets up the day for success, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's all about those healthy habits, replacing those bad habits with healthy habits that prolong us and our lives and our minds.
Yeah. But then, you know, there's always going to be bad days. There's no such thing as every day is a good day. And
True.
so through, you know, when COVID happened, there was a lot going on in my life, and people kept telling me, like, how are you not falling apart? And I really had to think about it. And it's because I had built such a good system for my mind and my heart.
Yeah. Yes.
And my spirit. I don't want to leave the spirit out. And you know, I had lost my job right before COVID. And then I had my knee surgery, which was going to put me down, like immobile, which is for me. Like, anyone who knows me, I don't want to sit still. I want to go adventure. I'm curious. That's my curiosity. It just takes me places. You know, there might be a new place where I want to do my Qigong practice and I don't get to go. So
Yeah.
is the beach going to go anywhere? No, it'll still be there. But so I had to sit for 4 months. I lost my grandmother during COVID, and then there was a war in Armenia, and I lost my kid cousin in the war. Like, it was just like back to back things were happening. And then and then realizing what those feelings were. Here I am in bed. I can't do anything to help the homeland. I can't do anything to help my family in Armenia. I can't do anything to really help myself in the routine that I had built, which was hiking, going to the beach, swimming, seeing friends, eating out. So what am I left with again? All the teachings I had learned in my 3-day, on my 3-day solos. And so I really had to go back into, you know, what do I like to do? Think and process, and knowing
Adapt.
to adapt. This is a temporary situation. It's not forever, and it's appreciating it for what it was. Like, you know, grateful that I get to go back. Gratefulness is a practice that literally gets me through everything that is trial and turbulent, and grateful that I get to go back to my parents' house so that I can recover through knee surgery there, and, you know, them in their old age still helping me get the right nutrition I need. And, you know, even as small as That's fantastic. I have a television and I get to watch Netflix. Like I have really no room to complain. There's other people, you know, not minimizing my troubles, at the same time appreciating and being grateful for what I do have. It's a balance.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, I love that. I think what comes up for like me and all of that is like people in recovery have to learn how to deal with their emotions. Like that's like what it is. So you, myself, Angie, we have years of dealing with how we feel and coming up with coping skills and strategies and tools and techniques. And we do it on the low because we have so many feelings. We're just always dealing with them, you know.
Sure.
But to outside of the recovery community or people that haven't had to look as deep as some of us may have, it seems outlandish or difficult or crazy. But to us, all we do is just diagnose our feelings and fix them or look at them or process or heal. So nothing really changes besides the situations that bring up the feelings. Yeah. And I kind of feel now, like for me, I have 7 years sober, right? So I look at from the beginning till now, I realistically just have this tool belt of dealing with emotions. And so the situations will always change, but the emotions are always the same. And I just apply those tools to these emotions and apply a little bit of time. And it always works. So far, it's always worked. Yeah. That's kind of what I was hearing you say, you know, it's like, what do I have that works? I'll apply it to these new situations, to these similar feelings. And voila, here we are, smiling today.
Well, I think the biggest thing is and like you mentioned with COVID over and over, it's being able to pivot. You know, life is never going to be exactly what you thought it was going to be, and the day's not going to go exactly how it's planned. And, you know, we could have the best intentions and have it completely derailed. And so how do we pivot and make the best of that situation and move on and continue to do well, regardless of whatever's happening either in the world or in our world, is making the best of it and not being thrown by whatever it is.
1000% for sure. Yep.
The other day, we're kind of winding down here, but I was just going to say something cool I heard. I don't know if anyone listens to Joe Rogan, and maybe it's taboo to shout out another podcast on our podcast. But hey, what's up, Joe Rogan? If you're listening, which he's probably not. But he was on an episode with Dr. Anna Limke. We've talked about her a couple times, but Joe asked her like, I forget what the question was, but essentially he asked like, who are like the strongest people that you know? Like, who are the people you look up to the most? And she said people in recovery. People that were addicts and are not anymore. Wow. Because of kind of the things we were just talking about. Like the work that we do on ourselves produces this version of a person that is like stellar or extraordinary. It's like, it's such a polished version of us, you know, because we had to, you know, we had to.
Yeah, you have to break it all down. Like breaking yourself down is the ugliest thing ever. There's nothing, I mean, it ends up being something beautiful. It's like the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? You do become a butterfly, but you have to go through it. And there's something I read recently, the struggle of the process from the caterpillar to the butterfly, when they try to get out of the cocoon. You know, a little girl tried to help the butterfly get out of the cocoon, but what she didn't know was by helping her, the butterfly now could not fly. Its wings were not fully developed. And now I thought to myself, this is exactly what it is to go through it as a human as well. Like you have to just go through it. You will come out on the other end. It's just having that, you know, courage and strength to face yourself.
Yeah, and nobody can do it for you.
Nobody can do it. If
you got to spend time in the cocoon.
I do it for somebody, but I can't, and that's always been my struggle. Like I know how to help you, but you have to want to.
We'll damage their wings,
right? Yeah. So we got to teach them how to help themselves. Yeah,
for sure.
And that's being a good leader, is teaching them how to help themselves to go through that process.
Yeah,
And then I know we got to go, but one last thing I want to leave with, and it's also, and I've said this before, it's just layers of an onion. It's not like something you did and now you're fixed and you're better. It's something that continues to come up, and you have to continue doing the work, and you have to continue growing, expanding, going deeper. It's a lifelong journey. It's not just like, oh, I did it, I'm better, on with life. Like you got to keep working
every
through all
day.
those layers.
Yep, every day.
Well, Aline, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your
Great
story.
conversation.
We've
Thank
never
you.
tapped in or dived in too deeply to like the wilderness treatment therapy stuff. So that was badass. Thank you for that. That was awesome.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
like want to do that as an adult. Like I want to find a place where I can go do that as an adult. Maybe not 3 months, but maybe not being kidnapped in the middle of the night. But there's certain things about it that sound like I could see the benefit for sure.
Yeah, wonderful. And the
I'd go.
Qigong too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I definitely want to look into that. So I'll be reaching out to you on that.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah, we got some to-dos. Well, thank you so much for your time, Aline. This has been awesome.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for having me.